Wow. Wow is all I can say right now. First of all, Happy New Year. Welcome here, folks, to the Sports Talk Nation. It is 2021. I hope everyone's having a good start to this new year because what we saw tonight, and I know we don't usually do a lot of college football recaps and stuff like that, but what we saw tonight is going to could have a very big impact on what's coming up here for the NFL draft regarding both the Jets, obviously who's ahead of them right now, and the Jaguars. Wow. And if you're a Jets fan right now, you have to be giddy. You know why? Because if everything plays out the way everyone is expecting, right? Everyone thinks Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent. Everyone thinks Trevor Lawrence is going to go number one. Jaguars own the number one pick. If Justin Fields is exactly what we saw tonight, and I know he had the rough game against Northwestern a couple weeks ago, boy, oh boy, it's time to get excited. So let's talk about this. About the potential of maybe either A, getting this kind of player as your quarterback, or B, if you're Joe Douglas, getting a lot of picks potentially if you want to trade down. So let's talk about that right now. First of all, on the game itself between Fields and Lawrence, from Fields' standpoint first, let me start there. We'll get to Lawrence in a second. The Buckeyes came to this game at 6-0. They were getting a lot of disrespect. A lot of people thought they shouldn't have been in this game. A lot of people thought the Big Ten bent over backwards to get Ohio State into this game. Clemson was throwing a lot of disrespect at them, so they had the disrespect card coming into this game. You have Justin Fields coming off of a rough performance against Northwestern where he throws a couple of interceptions. Didn't look great. Going into a rematch against Clemson, a team that beat Ohio State in these same semifinals just a year ago, in a game where Fields threw 2 picks in that game. So Ohio State coming in here certainly with revenge on its mind. And boy, did Justin Fields put on a performance of a lifetime for himself. 22 out of 28, 385 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Not only, and we'll get to the toughness factor in a minute here, but it was like a combination of Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes. That's kind of what we saw here from Justin Fields. That's what it felt like at times in this game. I mean, he was accurate, had great touch with the football, did a great job on the deep ball. Couple of big deep passes, of course, the 2 big touchdowns. The 56-yard bomb of a touchdown into the hands of Chris Olave, and then coming back in the fourth quarter, start of the fourth quarter, hitting a 45-yard bomb to Jameson Williams, as Ohio State would, as I said, go on to make it a 41-21 game en route to a 49-28 win. He was phenomenal. But more importantly, it's the toughness factor that really stood out for me in this game. He takes a nasty hit to the ribs from James Skalski. Looks like he could end up coming out of this football game, and you can have a lot of questions about whether Ohio State should have taken Justin Fields out of this football game, and even Fields, for that matter, admitted it later after the game, saying that his ribs were barking for the rest of the football game, but he's toughed it out, stayed in the football game, and still threw 4 touchdowns, and again, threw them accurately. He was phenomenal. How about the touchdown pass that he had to Luke Farrell? Oh my goodness. That was before the injury, where he just threaded the needle right to Farrell, right through the hands of the defender for a touchdown and tied it up at 14. Then then coming back, getting the touchdown to Ruckert, the 17-yard pass after the injury, having a wherewithal to come right back, a play later, and throw the touchdown, even though he came running off the field, holding onto his ribs. It was a phenomenal performance, and a performance that's going to elevate his stock in this draft. And if you are a team like the Jets, who has the number 2 overall pick, now you have options. Now you have potentially, if everything goes the way everyone thinks it's going to go, with the Jaguars potentially taking Trevor Lawrence number 1, if they want to stay doing that, to continue to do that, you could have Justin Fields fall right into your lap if you're the Jets at number 2. That could happen. And now if you're Joe Douglas, now you're going to have some decisions to make. Do you take Justin Fields there at number 2? Do you take a Zach Wilson, who a lot of people like as well coming out of this draft? Or do you hold on to Sam Darnold, say you want to stay with him, and use the leverage now that you have with the number 2 overall pick because of this performance by Fields and get a ransom in picks? Because there are going to be a lot of teams that are going to look at this performance against Clemson. Who knows what he's going to... I don't know what he's going to do against Alabama yet, but if he has a solid game against Alabama, it's going to elevate that stock a little bit more for that pick, and you can get a lot of good picks. If you are the Jets, for that matter, you can get a big haul in return for someone like Justin Fields. To me, if I am Joe Douglas, if I am the Jets and I had that pick, and as much as I like Sam Darnold, but I do have questions about Darnold right now moving forward. The injury history being a problem, hasn't completed a full season in 3 years. The inconsistency at times, the trouble that he has in footwork, the turnovers that have been a problem. And granted, I understand he's a guy who hasn't had a real complement of weapons. He's had a buffoon of a head coach in Adam Gase. I totally understand that. But I have a chance to go out there and get it. If this Justin Fields is what we're going to see, if this is the Justin Fields who's going to go out there on Sundays and put these kind of performances up or something of the ilk, and you take a look at his game, and look at his numbers in his games, very impressive. I understand the interceptions were a problem against Northwestern. I understand the interceptions were a problem against Indiana earlier in the year. But you look at a lot of his other games, he has done a very solid job. And if you are looking at this at the Jets, you're saying maybe this is the guy. Maybe this is the guy. Keep in mind, you're going to have a new head coach, potentially. Adam Gase, we assume, is going to be out the door after Sunday. The Jets are going to have a new head coach in town. Douglas and whoever the new head coach you would have to imagine are going to want to have potentially their own guy. And you could have it right here in Justin Fields. In a performance like this, in a big game with the bright lights, that's got to stand out for you. And also the fact that he went out there, again, injured, with a chip on his shoulder. That really impresses me even more than the 6 touchdowns, for that matter, that he was able to do all this injured. That has to stand out for something. That has to count for something, at least in my mind. And that, to me, elevates his stock even more if you're a team like the Jets. Now, this also could intrigue a team like the Jaguars, because the Jaguars are sitting there potentially the number 1 pick, as the number 1 pick. Do they now rethink this with Trevor Lawrence saying, he didn't look that good? And Lawrence did not look good in this game against Ohio State. Yes, he threw a couple of touchdowns. Yes, the numbers say he finished with 400 yards passing, but here's the facts. Lawrence looked rattled in the pocket. He was sacked a couple of times. He fumbled the ball 3 times. He did not look good against this Ohio State defense. And you take a look of his last 3 postseason games. Last year, this year, 2 games against Ohio State and against LSU in the championship game last year. He struggled. He has struggled in those games against big teams, against good defenses. So that has to concern you a little bit. I'm not trying to question anything that he has done in the regular season at Clemson. He has put up great numbers. He is, by a lot of accounts, going to be, a lot of people say he's a generational talent. He's had his issues in big games. That's all I'm saying. That's it. So we'll take it from what it is from that standpoint. Do the Jaguars now look at this game and say, do we really want to stick with Trevor Lawrence? So now that comes into question. We're already seeing a lot of fans on social media, asking that same question. Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. But if this all holds true, a lot of people expect Trevor Lawrence, regardless, to go number 1 overall to Jacksonville. Okay? And you have a Justin Fields sitting there, if you're the Jets, you got to do it. You got to pull the trigger. And it's funny because we were sitting here a few days ago, even a few hours ago, looking at this situation with the draft. Oh my goodness, the Jets have won a couple of games. What have they done? Losing out on the so-called generational talent. He may still end up being a great player. Trevor Lawrence may still end up being this generation's Peyton Manning. I have no idea. But for what we have seen tonight from Justin Fields, again, just the tenacity, the intestinal fortitude to go out there and play at that kind of level, to me speaks volumes. And that's why Now it makes this top of the draft that much more interesting. It makes the value of the number 2 overall pick for the Jets that much more intriguing. And now all of a sudden, if you're a Jet fan, you gotta be giddy. You gotta be giddy. And also, there's another guy in this game that really played a big role in Trey Sermon. Man, he had a big game too. 193 yards rushing for Trey Sermon on Friday night, including a touchdown, blasting through people in this game for Ohio State. He is a senior. He has certainly elevated his stock in the draft. I imagine that he could be a guy who could be like a second round, third round pick now because of his performance, maybe even second round. So that's a name to sit there and kind of watch for come the NFL draft. Kind of like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, the way he was performing for LSU last year with Joe Burrow. Ended up getting himself drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs with Helaire, and he has now been a nice contributing piece to that Chiefs team. That could be someone like a Trey Sermon, someone who is going to get picked up now and be a nice contributing piece, a big piece for somebody. 6'1", 215-pound running back who looks like he's even heavier than 215 for that matter. He could be a big contributor at some point down the road. But again, final thought is, if you were the Jets, and if Justin Fields is sitting there, in my mind, you got to pull the trigger now. I don't think there's any question about it. And again, I know there's a lot of people like Zach Wilson. A lot of people say stick with Darnold, trade the pick, stick with Darnold, build around Darnold. I know that debate's out there, and it's going to continue to range on for months and months and months. We got a long way to go. But it's all about this. It's all about who's going to be the next head coach of this team. Who will be the next head coach of this team that's going to have the opportunity to coach a young quarterback, for that matter, and get that quarterback to perform at a high level in the NFL and a consistent level. That's key number one, obviously, right there. But for tonight, it's a good night to be a Jet. It's a good night to sit there and kind of be a little giddy if you are a fan of the green and white. We'll talk to you next time, folks. Remember to follow us on social media at OpenMicNJ, Facebook.com/OpenMicProgram, and remember to like and subscribe right here to the Sports Talk Nation. We'll talk to you next time.